Well, our presentation today is on trailer safety. This is something that many of us may deal with. Some of us will pull a trailer every day. That's just part of your job. That's part of your life is to pull a trailer around behind your vehicle. Some of us it's a lot less frequent an occurrence. No matter how often you pull a trailer, it increases the risk when you're out doing that job, taking whatever it is from one place to another, whether it's your snowmobiles that you're hauling to the mountains to go for a ride, or it's a 53-foot semi trailer that you're pulling behind that tractor. That's trailers increase the risk, and that's really what we're talking about today. You know, some of you out there may have been out doing some home improvement over the weekend, and you got to Home Depot or whatever the hardware store is where you are, and you bought a bunch of lumber and walked out to your sedan and said, well, how are we going to get all this stuff home? Well, it may not have gone so well, and you might have decided that maybe it's time to use a trailer. And you say, I need to use a trailer. How do I go about learning how to use a trailer? Or maybe you're an old pro and you've been dragging trailers around the West for a long time. Well, that's the purpose of this presentation today, is to help us be safer in using trailers. Trailers are essential for us to be able to get the products that we need where we need those. You think if you took the semi trucks out of our commerce, those trailers that are going up and down the freeways and through our city streets, we'd be in big trouble quickly. And really, for most of your operations out there, you're using trailers in one way or another to do your job. So how do we do that safely? That's what we're talking about today. We got to realize that trailers come in all various different types. Some are large, some are small, some are goosenecks, some are bumper pulls. There are various different configurations, from enclosed to flatbed to dump beds, all kinds of different types of trailers, and each one have their own challenges and benefits. And so let's dive. Well, just a couple of thoughts on trailers as we go in. I was thinking about this. How do we characterize trailers? And a couple of things popped into my mind. The longer the trailer, the more stable it is. It's easier to track down the road straight if I've got a longer trailer. It's a lot harder to get into a tight spot. The shorter the trailer, the less stable it is. But I can maneuver that little trailer into places that are really difficult to put the long trailer in. There are challenges to each of these things. There's good and bad with each different type of a trailer. A gooseneck trailer maneuvers very differently than a bumper pull. The height, the weight, the load distribution affect how our trailer pulls. And so as I talk about this today, I'm talking some generalities. We'll talk some specifics, but there's going to be some very important differences between the trailer that you're pulling and the generality that I give in here. And so we've got to learn about each of the types of vehicles that we're pulling, and how they differ and how they affect the safety. All right, well, let's start at the really basic part of a trailer. We hook it up with a hitch, and the hitch is critical. Hitch is that potential weak point in the system. Those connections have to be proper. They have to be adequate. We have to have enough capacity or strength in that hitch to be able to hold the type of loads that we're going to put on it. That's probably the weakest point, will be right at that hitch. It needs to be adequate for the load that we have in both the trailer as well as the load that we're putting on that. So we've got to know what that load is. Sometimes we can put something on a trailer like a skid steer loader. It doesn't look very big, but they're extremely heavy, and they might exceed our trailer's capacity. All right, let's dive in. Safety chains. Another essential safety feature is having a good set of safety chains that are in good condition and are appropriate for the weight that we're talking about and the type of trailer. Those chains are designed to be crossed over each other underneath the tongue of the trailer. So if the trailer becomes disconnected for one reason or another, that tongue will drop down and hopefully cradle the tongue in that, so it doesn't hit the road surface and start bouncing in various different directions. If your trailer becomes disconnected and your safety chains need to be engaged, is it going to be a good day? Are you going to end up with zero damage to your vehicle? Probably not. The goal is that we don't kill people, that we don't have our trailer take off and cause serious injury or death to people out on the road. So those safety chains need to be adequate for the loads that we're talking about. They also need to be in good condition. Sometimes I'll be driving down the freeway at night and I come upon a vehicle towing a trailer and I see sparks bouncing down the road. And as I pull up to pass that trailer, I'll see that their safety chains are dragging. Well, what's happening to that safety chain every time it bounces the road and sparks go out? Well, that's just like taking a grinder and taking some of that metal away from the safety chains. They're not going to hold as much if they've been damaged like that. So we need to adjust the safety chains to the appropriate length. Well, how do I do that? Well, some safety chains have the ability that you can shorten and lengthen those just by looping around and where you hook on. Others don't have that option. I found one of the easiest ways to shorten up a set of safety chains is just to twist the chain, and that'll reduce the length of the chain. How long should those safety chains be? Well, it needs to be somewhere between too long and too short. There's no perfect length on that. It's going to be specific to the type of, to your vehicle, the hitch, and the trailer. And it's going to change from different vehicles that you hook up because their hitches might be different lengths, or the tie points for the safety chains are in a different location. And so I've got to adjust those most times when I'm working on that. So when I said somewhere between too long and too short, what is too long? Too long is if they're bouncing on the road or close to it. Too short is if I am making a turn and those chains start to get tight. That could potentially break the chains, could cause other issues with our trailer there. So somewhere in between, it's kind of that baby bear just right. Right, we're going to get it just in the perfect spot. Okay, electrical connections are important. You have a multi-terminal plug and they vary in different configurations. Some of them are really simple, just a flat blade, and some of them are a round connection, and there could be a lot of other ones out there. The thing that we need to ensure is that we have the right connection and then it is securely secured into that socket so it won't pop out. A lot of these will have a clip on there that will hold the plug in place. Just an important point: if you don't have lights on that trailer, don't move the trailer. We need to fix it. Let's get out there and check it out. And just by way of helping you out a little bit, it's probably the ground if your lights aren't working. That's always been, it seemed like that's my Achilles heel, is the ground wire that will cause those issues. Well, we've got to check those lights each time before I use a trailer and ensure that all those electrical connections are working and that we can be really visible. The drawbar, sometimes we call this the hitch, but technically we call that the drawbar. This is the part that we put into our receiver, and it has stamped on it the rated load capacity for that drawbar. Now, I've got to look at each part of the overall system and ensure that I have adequate weight-bearing capacity for each of those. I start with my vehicle. I can have too small of a car to pull a certain weight. If I take a 12,000 pound trailer, I can't put that on my Prius and pull it down the road. So I start with the car. What is my rated load capacity? And then I get to my hitch and this drawbar. It has a stamped load rating on there. Every part of this needs to exceed the total weight that I have on the trailer. So both the ball and the drawbar as well, and any hardware that goes along with it. So that pin that holds the drawbar into the receiver hitch it needs to be designed for that task. I can't just go out and say, oh, here's a rusty old bolt. That'll probably work. Use a pin that's designed for that task and is matched to the weight capacity for what you're dealing with that drawbar. Next part of that is the coupler on the trailer. We want to match the ball to the coupler. So each trailer has a specific size, and there are multiple different sizes for that. And so you can take a look on that coupler and it will say this is a 2-inch ball, and your ball on your hitch needs to match that. If I don't match those up, we could have a really bad day, because as the weight shifts on that trailer, it may lift up and detach from the ball. And that's a really bad thing to have happen. Now we're relying on our safety chains, and that trailer is going to be bouncing around there and could cause us to wreck, could cause damage to our vehicle, any number of things when this system fails. So always ensure that it's the right one. Here at the Trust, we identified this as a potential risk to us, because we had trailers that had different size couplers and associated ball hitches with that. We put a color coding system on those before we actually replaced the hitches out to make them all the same size, so we don't have that risk. But we would put a color coding on there. This is a 2-inch. This is another size, and so we wanted to make sure that we didn't make a mistake in that. You're much better off to have them all the same, but that doesn't always happen, right? We have larger trailers that will have a much larger ball hitch, but we've got to match those things up. All right, there are various types of locking mechanisms on these couplers. Some of those are like the one we see in the picture here, where there's a little cam mechanism and it locks. We need to put a pin in that and clip it in place to ensure that it doesn't become uncoupled. There are others. There are pintle hitches. There are other ways that we can attach, and we've got to make it appropriate for the weights and the type of loads that we're carrying. Okay. All right. Once again, that ball may be the weak link in the system. You think of that one bolt that's holding that ball on, or the nut that's holding that in. If there's a shank in it, that is a potential weak link. So I read on the ball as well. The weight capacity is stamped on the ball. That number needs to exceed the rated capacity of the trailer, the gross vehicle weight of the vehicle, and that's the trailer and whatever load that I have on it, the backhoe, the skid steer. It needs to exceed that, and ensure that we match that with the coupler once again. All right, the receiver, we kind of call all of this collectively the hitch. We might call this the receiver hitch. This is how our drawbar is connected to the vehicle. And they come in a lot of different configurations, but once again, they're all rated. There will be a rated capacity on it, and so I've got to take a look at where that is tagged. There's a tag or a stamp on that receiver hitch, and it will tell me what the capacity is. Now, if I overload, I can do a lot of damage not only to the trailer, but I can also damage my vehicle as well. And it might make it so I can't maintain control of the vehicle while I'm driving. All right. Here's a chart where it shows the various different class ratings of hitches, of receivers, and you can see what the tongue weight limit is, the maximum trailer weight, et cetera, et cetera. It'll tell us how big of a receiver we need to have and how many points it needs to be attached onto the vehicle. Once again, your vehicle has a certain rated capacity, And so even if I put a class 5 hitch on my Prius, I'm not going to be able to tow that 12,000 pounds because that car doesn't have the ability to do that. It doesn't have the suspension or the motor or transmission or anything like that to pull that kind of weight. All right, next part. On your trailer, we're going to check something called the GVWR, the gross vehicle weight rating. And that is the total weight of the trailer with anything that's on it or in it. So the weight of the trailer, and when I pull that skid steer loader on there, I'm going to add 10,000 pounds or whatever the weight of that skid steer is to the overall weight of the trailer. In this system, every part of it has to exceed that gross vehicle weight rating or what I'm going to load onto the trailer. So my ball hitch needs to, the ball on my hitch needs to exceed that GVWR. Okay, there's another, every trailer should have a tag or a stamped information placard on it like this. It'll have the GVWR. It also has one called the GAWR, and that's the gross axle weight rating. So if I have a trailer that has multiple axles on it, 2, 3, or even more different axles, this divides out that weight per axle. So I may have, if I distribute my weight in a different way, I may exceed the weight rating for an axle, even if I haven't exceeded the weight rating for the overall trailer. So I've got to look at both of those numbers, ensure I do it right. If I have a single axle weight rating, then that should be the same number as the GVWR. Okay. All right. Once again, remember or ask yourself the question: can the vehicle handle the trailer? And how do I know that? Well, each vehicle will have a rating on a tow rating, and so you can look that up in the owner's manual or the information about your vehicle. All right. So we talked about distribution of weight on a trailer. That is one of the most important parts. It's an art and a science to get a load distributed appropriately on a trailer. And if I don't get it in the right spot, I can run into a lot of problems and maybe not even be able to control the vehicle going down the road. So here's the rule of thumb on that. You want about 10 to 15% of the load weight, that weight of the trailer, the load that I have on there, on the tongue, the front part of that trailer. I want it on the tongue because I want downward pressure on the hitch, but not too much. So we look at about 10 to 15%. Now, if that 10 to 15% exceeds the tongue rated capacity for your hitch or for your vehicle itself, then I need a different vehicle. I've got to move up to a heavier duty vehicle to move that. Remember, where I put that weight is really important. So obviously we want to put weight a little bit to the front of the trailer. So I put the weight on those driving wheels on my vehicle. But remember also that side to side, front to back, where I put that weight will really change how that trailer pulls going down the road, and could cause me to have some real problems if I put it in the wrong way, in the wrong place. Don't overload. Just I'll say that way too many times in this presentation, but don't overload your trailer. Here's a quick video presentation of how this first part is a trailer that is properly loaded. Now they're going to take that red weight and put it back to the back so it's heavier in the rear. And so we talk about the death wobble. And you could see how just simply changing weight away from the tongue of the trailer can totally change how the vehicle deals with a crosswind or a difference in the road surface that could cause us to go into that fishtail and have the trailer go out of control and could potentially cause us to crash. So, but remember though, if I put too much weight onto the tongue, that can also cause problems itself. It can cause damage to my suspension on my vehicle. It causes me to ride wrong. It can affect my ability to brake and stop the vehicle. Okay. Also can affect my steering as well. So I want to hit that sweet spot of about 10 to 15% weight on the tongue. All right. Trailer sway can be handled a little bit. Sometimes I'm dealing with a challenging trailer. A lot of people will use this type of a system on a bumper pulled camper trailer, and this kind of balances out. It's more of an additional attachment point or points to that trailer hitch that will help manage that sway back and forth. All right. Also, other things to consider is what is my drawbar? How does it compare to where the tongue should be? Trailers are designed to relatively travel flat. And so as I pick a drawbar for that, I may have to have a drop, or I may have one that comes straight out. Occasionally, you may actually raise up to have that drawbar line up and keep that trailer so it's traveling relatively level going down the road. Does that impact the capacity of the hitch or the drawbar when I have a radical drop? And the answer is yes, it can dramatically impact that. I see some guys going down the road and they've lifted their pickup trucks up, and they have this 14, 18-inch drop hitch. And I think, wow, by putting that lift on that truck, you've really reduced the towing capacity that you can pull. All right. Just a couple of thoughts on here. A gooseneck trailer is far more stable and gives you more control in towing. So if you have the option to make a pick between one or another, I would pick the gooseneck. Now, they may have other challenges that go along with them. I can't put stuff in the bed of my truck as I'm hooked up to that gooseneck trailer, or limited amount of stuff that I can have in there. But they give me a lot more stability. I'm not going to have the same kind of wobble and sway with a gooseneck as I would with a bumper pull. All right. Securing your load. This is not an exact science as well, because it depends on the load. If I've got a couple of sheets of plywood that I'm putting on a flatbed trailer, I'll probably use a strap. But if I'm tying down a backhoe, then I'm probably going to be using chains, load binders, various things like that are designed specifically for that type of a load. I need to tie down at least the four corners. Let's just take the example of a backhoe, or if it's a tractor, I need to at least tie down the four corners of that. And then for every implement that I add, so in a backhoe, I'm going to have a bucket, and I'll also have the backhoe on the back. Each of those implements also need to be secured to the trailer. So I can't have the backhoe start wobbling around as we're driving down the road. What type of tie downs do I need? They need to be adequate for the load that we're working on. So load binder will have a rated capacity on it, and those capacities need to exceed the load that we're pulling. So once again, I got to know, how much does that backhoe weigh? How much does the skid steer weigh? And have appropriate hardware for that. Most of the time, we buy stuff that is over-engineered for that type of thing, for that type of equipment that we're dealing with. But when we talk smaller loads and random loads, well, sometimes we're going, okay, is this hitch or is this strap appropriate for the type of load that I'm tying down? Okay. All right. Always check the lights. Make sure that they work. Turn on your ignition. Walk around your vehicle. Anytime I pull a trailer, it's whether it's a DOT thing, whether I'm CDL operator or not, I need to do a pre-trip inspection. Walk around it. Make sure the lights are working. Make sure the tires are inflated. Make sure that the parts and pieces are all there, and there's not stuff hanging out on the vehicle. Sometimes I'm pulling trailers with dual tires on there. I need to inspect the duals and make sure there aren't rocks inside of the duals, and make sure there aren't rocks or other pieces of equipment that are sitting up on the trailer somewhere. Clean the trailer off before I pull it out there, so those items aren't falling off and causing hazards to other motorists out on the road. Most trailers will have what they call DOT reflectors on the sides, and also reflectors on the rear. If those are missing, get those back in place. Tires and wheels are really important as well. So we want to ensure that part of this whole system, the tires and wheels, are rated for the types of loads that we're talking about. And on the tires, it will be printed right on the tire what the load capacity is, what the proper tire pressure is. We had a discussion on this in the first session there. What's an appropriate tire pressure for your tires that you have on your trailer? And the answer is it depends. It depends on the tires, what their rated capacity is, depends on the loads that we're taking, and the proper pressure for that is the maximum inflation that it says on the side of the tire. I did a little research in between sessions there on that, and everything I could get was you should be at the max pressure when the tire is cold. What if you're testing it when it's warm? We really shouldn't do that. We should always do it when it's cold. But if I have to, then I'm probably going to go about 3 psi above. And that's the best information I could get out there on that. The big thing is we want to make sure we've got appropriate tires for the type of loads that we're working on. Don't mix and match tires. They should be matched up, especially things like mixing a radial and a bias ply tire can cause real problems going down the road. You know, inspect the tires, they have adequate tread, and we don't have, bulges or steel belts showing in those tires. Also, when I pull a trailer, I always like to look at the wheel bearings. Now, this doesn't work very well for big trailers, but if you're pulling a small trailer around, I'll grab a hold of the tire and move and see it and yank it back and forth and see if there's movement there. If I see some movement, then we're going to go in and have the mechanic take a look at it. Now, this doesn't take the place of regular maintenance and inspections and all of those things, to have our mechanics do that, but it's always a good thing to check that. Okay. Same thing goes with the lugs on our tires. Check those things out, and if you see something that looks amiss, let's check it and fix it. I like to use an inspection. We've got a simple inspection checklist for a very simple trailer. This is not one that you would use for your DOT over the road trailers like that, but it's more for a simple flatbed or an enclosed trailer that you might be using behind a light pickup. And I'll send that out to everybody who signed up for the webinar today. Do your walk around check and make sure everything's there. Make sure everything's tied down. So besides our loads, make sure the doors and hatches are all secured. I like to put a lock on it, put a padlock on those doors and ramps as I'm going down the road. So then I've got that extra level of surety that door is not going to come open, or the ramp's not going to come open. I've locked it, but I've latched it, but I've also locked it at the same time. Don't take chances on that kind of stuff. Lots of things to look for as we go out there. Make sure your jack is properly stowed and secured so it can't get in the wrong place. And also look at your equipment operation, your safety chains, your tire pressure. All of those things are really, really important. All right. Do a double check. I always do that. I'll check before I start, and just before I head out, I always verify to make sure that I latch that hitch and the pins are in place. So there's just no doubt in my mind that everything is how it should be as we go out. Okay. Adjust your mirrors. This is an important part of pulling a trailer. It's different than just driving your vehicle down the road. Many trucks now have the ability to extend the mirrors out on the side so I can see better when I'm pulling a trailer, but you should adjust those mirrors so you can see the trailer, and you can also see the tires on the trailer. That's an essential thing to keep your eye on as you're driving down the road. Remember, when you're pulling a trailer, that the height and total length of the trailer are going to impact your ability to turn and maneuver around. You have to take wider turns. You have to take longer to stop. It is going to be harder to stop that vehicle with the trailer on than it is without. So we advocate to start with a 5-second following distance for the smallest trailer. And then for every 10 feet of trailer that you add on, trailer length, you add an additional second. And so you obviously, if I'm getting out to a 53-foot semi-trailer, my following distance is getting a lot bigger than 5 seconds. And that is essential to be able to stop the vehicle in a reasonable amount of time should something happen ahead of us. Okay. Stay alert around corners. You have to take wider turns. Watch your speed. We obviously should go slower pulling a trailer than we do just in a regular passenger car or truck. If your vehicle has a tow haul function on it, push the button and use that. If it doesn't, don't pull a trailer with overdrive on or that high gear setting. Well, I'll want to shift down from that out of that overdrive so it doesn't put undue impact on my transmission and my running gear there. Avoid sudden stops. That can put excess pressure onto our whole system. Slow down when you're going over railroad crossings, bumps, and things like that. If you notice that you're starting to have sway issues, the death wobble as we go down the road, take your foot off the gas and slowly come to a stop on the side of the road and readjust the load on where it sits on your trailer. All right. Weather can have a major impact on our ability to pull a trailer. Crosswinds can, especially with an enclosed trailer or a tall trailer, can have a major impact. I remember back a few years we had in Davis County here, we get these east wind events where we'll have sometimes 100-mile-per-hour plus winds that come out. And up in Centerville, not too far away from the Trust, I was driving along the freeway there, and there were dozens of semi-trucks that had tipped over on their sides, and some of them were at a complete stop when they tipped over. So we got to keep that in mind, that those crosswinds can impact us. And so our awareness of weather conditions before we start out is an important part of driving safely with a trailer. All right, covered the rest of that. Backing is a challenge with the trailer. That's all there is to it. Some of you on here are old hands that have been doing this for a long time, and it seems like second nature. Some of you haven't backed a trailer before, or only a few times, and it's a challenge. Just some thoughts on this to start with. If you're in a situation where the visibility is different, or if you just have the option, use a spotter. Have them help you get into the location you need to be. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And maybe that spotter is a little better trailer backer than you are. Don't be afraid to ask that person for assistance when it comes to that. I would far rather admit that I'm not a great trailer backer and not crash my car than the other way around. So don't be afraid to say, well, this is a little outside of my abilities. And so, hey, could you help me with this? Don't be afraid to try again. If I can't quite get in there, pull forward, get straight with where you're backing and do that. Let's just talk spotters just for one quick second. We want to have standardized hand signals that people can, everybody can understand. There's no absolute, this is the standard. This is one that OSHA puts out, but it's not actually in a required standard. It's just to help us out. And so these are good hand signals that can help us out. But one important rule is if you can't see your spotter, you need to stop the vehicle. Until that spotter is visible in your mirrors, the vehicle shouldn't move. Sometimes backing a vehicle is tough. And sometimes you get to a point where this might be the option. No, we don't want you to do that, but backing a vehicle is a challenging thing. So let's just talk through that. And I've gone a little longer than I planned on. Sorry, apologize for that. Here's some thoughts about this. Get a plan. Where do I want to end up? How do I want my vehicle positioned to start with? I want to try to get as straight with where I'm going to end up as I can. If I start out with my trailer jackknifed, it's going to be darn hard to get it where I need it to be. So get as straight as you can to start with. Scout your area. Are there any hazards there? Are there things that I've got to avoid? Other vehicles, you know, a pole out in the middle of the parking lot. I've got to get a plan to start with. How do you steer to back a trailer? When I was teaching my kids how to back a trailer, I started with them on a four-wheeler, an ATV, and we hooked a little yard trailer on the back of it. That's probably one of the hardest things in the world that you can back, because it's a little short trailer, and you turn just a little bit and it goes off in wild directions. And so in one fell swoop, I taught my kids how to back a trailer and swear all at the same time. It's a good way to really learn what happens when I'm backing, but a really challenging back. Okay, so just some thoughts on that. It's going to be opposite to what you generally think, but here's a way. If you're sitting in your vehicle and you've never backed a trailer before, and you say, how do I get my trailer to go to the right as I'm facing forward? I grab a hold of the bottom of the wheel and turn it to the right. Now, that's not how I do it in day-to-day practice, but it's a way that can help you to think of where's that trailer going to end up. So turn the bottom of the wheel the direction you want the trailer to go. Okay, we're going to take really small movements. I don't want to be, if I start turning that wheel over and over, I'm going to have really, really radical moves in the trailer, and that's hard to accommodate. So small moves, you know, they talk about aim small, miss small in firearms world. It's kind of like that. I'm going to steer small, and I'm going to stay mostly straight that way. Think about your pivot point. Where do things pivot in your operation? Obviously your vehicle's going to pivot. We're going to pivot at the hitch, but think about the axles in your trailer. At what point do I want those axles to pivot from one place to another, and how does that impact where I end up? All right. Watch all sides, make sure you're checking your mirrors. Can a backup camera help us when it comes to backing a trailer? Maybe. Sometimes if I've got a really small trailer that's hard to see in my mirrors, a backup camera might help me out that way. But in many cases, it's just going to be blocked by the trailer and I can't see that. Start slow, small, slight movements. Once again, see where the trailer is going first. Get lined up to start with, and don't be afraid to try again. If you get out of line, pull forward, get straight, and do it again. One important thing to remember about trailers is we don't want anybody riding on trailers. That is a dangerous thing. And over the years, we've had some really significant injuries from people falling off of trailers. And so let's be smart about that, and let's design our work so we don't have to have anybody riding on a trailer. Okay, sorry, I did go long. Apologize for that. I get a little chatty after I've done the first one there. Just in summary, you can do it. Take your time. Be smart. Look at all the ins and outs. Everything's got to match up when it comes to weights. But make sure your equipment's in good shape, and you can do it. Be safe out there.